I'm Kim, and I'm going to show you my absolute favorite way of composting inside, and it's called worm composting or vermi-composting, and it's great in the north because we can do it all year long, even when it's frozen outside, and it makes excellent compost to help your gardens grow, and it keeps food waste out of the landfill. One great tip is to keep your worms somewhere that is convenient for you, and I like to keep my worms underneath my kitchen sink. They're there! But really, you can keep them anywhere you like. Some people like to put them in a closet or under the stairs. Okay, here they are. So, these beautiful creatures eat my food waste, and they create this amazing stuff. And it's called worm castings, or worm compost. And what this was is just paper waste, shredded office paper, and food waste. And you can see all that's left. So how do you make your own worm bin? I'll show you right now all the things you need. And they're things that you can find all around your house. The first thing we need is some type of container to put your worms in. And it could be any type of container. It could be a large Rubbermaid bin, or it could be an old ice cream pail. Now, with a lid like this, we'll need to put air holes in it so the worms can breathe. Now, the next thing we'll need is bedding. So worms in nature will be bedded kind of in the leaf litter of a forest. So what we can do instead of leaf litter is use shredded office paper. So you can get this usually from any type of office in your town, or you can also use newspaper and just rip it up. Next, after the bedding, you want to have some other things that the worms need. And one thing that's important is some dirt or grit. So this is just a little bit of dirt that you can sweep up off your floor or in your porch. And they need this because worms don't have teeth. So they need something to help them grind up food in their stomachs. So there we go, we'll add the dirt in. The next thing that worms really love, that we might have a lot of, is some coffee grinds. Coffee grinds are excellent for worm composting. They love them. You can actually even raise worms just on coffee grinds if you want. And it's something we all have in our communities. So we'll add in the coffee grinds. The next thing we can add is another type of gritty thing, is crushed up eggshells. This bedding is very dry, and worms need to have a moist environment because they breathe through their skin, and so if they dry out, they won't be able to breathe. So what we'll do is we'll add water, and you can add water that's not chlorinated. So if you have water delivery that's chlorinated, you just let your water sit, or you can get water from a pond or a river. Now, you don't want your bedding to be wet, so there shouldn't be water coming off of it. It needs to be kind of moist, like a run-out sponge. So I've added a bit more than I wanted to, so I'm going to add some more bedding. Okay, they're going to love that. Worms will eat approximately their weight in food every week. So if you have a handful of worms like this, they'll eat a handful of food a week. So that's how much you can feed them. So some things that worms love include old moldy fruit. They'll also love any other types of vegetables. And when you feed worms, you want to make sure that you bury the food underneath their bedding so it's not sitting on top. They'll also eat grains, pasta, rice, barley. The only thing you want to watch for is not too much spices in your food. So when we add food, you can add it underneath your material. Worms will be much more efficient at eating your food waste if it's smaller and worm size. So I'm just gonna chop up this peach really fine, and they're gonna love that. Another thing that worms love is moldy bread. And don't worry, the mold is fine. It's another thing that worms will eat. I'm gonna do the same thing as before. I'm gonna bury it under the bedding. I'll show you. Okay, now they've got a beautiful place to live and some really delicious food. We can add our worms. Woo. Look at that. Look at all all those beautiful worms. A really simple way to harvest your worm compost is to dump your worm bin out in the sunshine or in a bright light area, and the worms will all, we can see it already, they'll all crawl down deeper. So what you can do after that is just pull off the top layer of the worm compost. So this is the stuff I'll use to start my seeds and to add nutrients to my garden soil. After harvesting some of the worm compost, it's easy to find the worms, you can add them to their new bedding in their new home. You actually don't need that many worms to start a worm compost bin. Probably just a small handful like that is fine, because they will reproduce every week, and every worm can reproduce. Here they are, getting settled in their new worm bin. Happy worms! Worm compost is incredible. First of all, it's full of nutrients from the food waste that the worms broke down, and it's also nice and moist, so it keeps your garden soil more moist. But the brilliant thing about worm compost is that it's filled with all kinds of life. So there's billions of microorganisms in this one handful of worm compost, and that includes bacteria, fungi, different types of very small microbes, and these are actually what bring food to your plants. It's not just the soil that feeds your plants. It is actually the microbes in the soil that break down the nutrients and bring that material to your plants. So you need them. You need life in your soil. And what we're doing when we're worm composting is we're actually growing whole handfuls of life. It's not hard to keep worms. They're very good company, quiet, and easy to take care of, and they can make beautiful stuff from our garbage.